And now, from the great state of Mississauga in Ontario, Canada, it's the Ted Wallachin Podcast. Brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's fashion, Tom's Place will suit you. And ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. ETP Canada. And now, here's Ted.
Thanks so much, Becky. Thank you all for tuning in. Welcome to another edition of the Ted Wallachin Podcast. Glad you're here with us. The name Tom Hayes resonates with most people who've lived in the city of Toronto, a newscaster who's worked at CTV, City TV, Global TV as well. He is an Edward R. Murrow Award winner, and he also has changed the date rape laws in this province and has an amendment called the Hayes Amendment named after him. We're going to talk to him about that, plus his latest project called 1 Minute Morning. Tom Hayes, it's good to see you. How you been?
It's great to see you, Ted. I've been fabulous, and thanks for the invitation today.
It is my pleasure. I stumbled across 1 Minute Morning. I don't know. I guess probably just by fluke, and I thought, well, this is great. And it literally is. It's like the old concept of give me 1 minute, I'll give you the world. Except in your case, the focus is on Toronto.
The focus is on Toronto, and I came up with the idea. We've been up for about 7 months now, so it hasn't been that long. But I came up with the idea about a year ago, thinking, it's what we do, right? So what is it that I can do traditionally, but also with this newfangled sort of technology? And I think I found a place in the morning where I wanted it to fit. And it's that spot where, mom, dad, or whoever is crazy getting ready. They could be getting ready for work, getting lunches together or whatnot. And they get to the office and they get in the elevator and somebody says, hey, did you hear Toronto's $1.8 billion in the hole? And they don't know. So this is something that allows you to get filled in at least on what the major stories are that day. And there's 4 of them every day. So at least you can walk out the door and feel like you know what's going on.
And the first question that popped into my mind after I watched it, and I thought, well, I like it. I like it because it's nobody wants to wake up with an empty head as you walk out the door, right? This way, at least you know what's going on. But now here the question is, you, Tom, have to decide what are the 4 major stories. And what if there's 5? What if there's only 2?
Right. So I have to decide, and that's where I get to bank on my 40 years of award-winning journalism and pick out the stories. Any newsroom, when you put on a newscast, whether it's a minute long or 60 minutes long, you still got to decide. No newscast is exactly 60 minutes long. Some days you're really trying to fill it, and other days stuff just doesn't fit. So, I have to use my journalistic background and pick what I think are the pertinent stories for the day.
And this is one of the great things that I like about, and we talked a little bit before we started rolling here about doing my podcast, that I like about my podcast is time is not a concern for me. I don't have to work within the constricts of time. If an interview is going well, it can go well for 28 minutes or it can go well for 16 minutes. I don't have to fill in a specific amount of time. And let's be honest, your 1 minute morning sometimes goes a minute 15, sometimes goes a minute 20.
Okay, so you're the first person that's actually got a watch out and timed it. Yeah,
no, it shows right on there, right on the screen.
It's not exactly a minute. Usually it's about a minute 10, minute 15. Yeah. But my out here is if you time just the individual stories minus everything else, it's about a minute.
Yeah. And I have to ask you this without getting too personal. You've got a couple of sponsors attached to that. How difficult was that for you to get? Because I talk to people in the podcast world, and sponsorship is not the easiest thing to come across.
It's very difficult. And you know what? When we look back at our careers, we had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And I don't like that part of it.
I don't either.
I've never been interested in sales or whatever, but it's necessary in order to keep going. And unbelievably, both of these sponsors contacted me and they said, I like what you're doing. Do you take advertisers? Guess what my answer was? I go, yes, of course. I didn't even know. It's a minute newscast, so you can't have a 30-second ad.
No.
Right? So the ads are 5 seconds long. I've got 2 of them. They both approached me. But you know why they approached me? Because if you're a local business and you're sizable and you want to advertise on social media, where do you go? When people put things out on the web, the goal is to conquer the world. But if you're a local Toronto business, you only want eyes and ears of Toronto. So where do you go? You can buy a Facebook ad, everybody just skip by. This lets you be targeted right to Toronto.
Right. And then so when you said, yes, I do want advertising, then they say to you, how much do you want? And you say to yourself, God, I don't know. I have no idea what this is worth.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out too.
Because
Um,
in radio and television, traditional radio and television, it's all based on cost per thousand. It's like $30 for every 1,000 listeners you have, or whatever it happens to be. But our metrics are I don't, the accuracy of our metrics are not accurate, to be
yeah,
honest with you. I don't know
yeah.
if anybody really knows how many people are listening or watching
Well, see,
at any given
I
time.
can tell you exactly through the metrics and the analytics on social media. In fact, I guarantee the viewership to the sponsors. So they pay a cost per watch, and if they want 80,000 watches, I can show them exactly where, excuse me, where they came from.
How do you do that?
So when you look on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok will tell you exactly how many watches you had in a day, how many watches you had in a month. Then you'll see the demographics, and you know what demographics always meant to our business. You'll see the demographics of male, female, age, and you'll see the location, primary location. And mine is 99% Toronto, of course, because that's where it's focused.
Mhm.
So I can actually go to a sponsor. They can say, you know, here's the cost per watch, and I'd like 80,000 watches of my ad, and I can deliver that to them to the number. And when we started, and again, we're only been up 7 months. 1 Minute Morning was getting about 30,000, 40,000 views a month when we started, and last month we did 160,000 views for the month.
Excellent. So tell me who your sponsors are, because I think it's fair to do that. I think it's important to do that.
Well, excellent. Yes. UBS is our main sponsor. That's Unlimited Building Solutions. They do big work with Amazon warehouses, Canadian Tire, all that sort of thing. So they're a really, really big Toronto company, and they're looking to spread across the country as well too. And this was the perfect vehicle for them. The other is Mellow Technology, and they're an office company, an office technology company, internet, phone systems, office support. And again, they've been in Toronto for 15 years, and they'd like to expand across the country as well. And so would I. I didn't
Yeah,
get into this just to do one market.
I
The
didn't think so.
the appeal here is that I can do this in a number of local markets, and that's the next move. I want to be the most famous local anchorman in North America.
So is is the idea then for you to say, okay, so here's a 1 minute a morning, it's the 1 minute morning Toronto version. Then you turn around and do one for Vancouver. You turn around and do one for Halifax, and et cetera, et cetera. Is that the idea, or
That
is
is the
it?
idea, but Vancouver works more so than Halifax because I've got another 3 hours on the
Yes,
clock.
yes,
Right, going west is easy.
yeah,
Going east is difficult. So I
yeah.
mean, my focus is definitely west at this point.
Okay. So when you do this, if well, I'm sure no, I shouldn't say if, I'm sure you will do it. Um, will you have to then count on your sources being? Would they be the same sources where you get your news now?
So, what we've had to do in Toronto, and it's a very small team, but I built a team in Toronto of people I've known for a very long time in this industry. And they loved the idea and they were on board right away. And those individual teams need to be built in each location because you really need somebody
Yeah,
with feet on the ground, with a feel for the streets, more so than just, ripping and reading, as we
and
used to
that's what I
say.
was asking, because and that's why one of the problems that people say that why one of the reasons why, and we'll talk about this for a minute as well a little later on, but one of the reasons why local television, local radio has been failing over the years, or has been their numbers have been dwindling, is because they've lost connectivity to the local stories, because they don't have people there anymore, because it's all being shipped in from one major warehouse.
Yeah, what one major studio.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, I worked at Global for freelance for 3, 4 years. They have an incredible system where the new I anchored the news in Toronto for Halifax, Montreal, Saskatoon. You know what I mean? And so
yeah,
so that it just went everywhere. But do I have a feel for that city like I do for Toronto, like I have for decades in Toronto? No, I,
no,
I don't think so. I don't think
yeah.
so. So, 1 Minute Morning is really about local. What's going on at City Hall? What's going on with garbage collection? What's going on with parks and rec and local politicians and whatnot? Stuff
Yeah.
you really, really should care about and really, really should know.
Yeah, well, kind of like the major sports story, if there's a breaking sports story, whether if there's a major traffic mess, you get like a
Yeah.
15 car pile up on the Don Valley or something.
Yeah, I liken it to municipal politics, which has always been my favorite politics because it's your backyard, it's your street, your park, but it gets the least amount of love when it comes to people going to the polls. I mean, turnout for municipal politics is like 30% on a
I
good
know.
day, right? So I like local news. I've during my career I had the opportunity to go national to do this. I stayed here. I love local news, and that's what I'm trying to represent on 1 Minute Morning.
And the interesting thing about local politics is that if you've ever gone canvassing for a local politician, you'll get people saying to you, "Well, what are you going to do about healthcare?" And you say, "Well, no, this is local. We don't deal with healthcare." Okay, what are you going to do about what are you going to do about education? Well, again, that's provincial, and we
Yep.
can't really do anything about that. And
Yep.
yet, we can make sure that there's a stop sign at the end of the street or a light, so that kids don't get killed crossing the roads while the traffic is zooming by. We can make sure that the parks are clean and the parks are safe, and these are the kinds of things they influence your life or have a bigger input in your life, impact on your life, I should say, than provincial or federal.
Huge, huge. Because when that stop sign gets knocked over, you're getting the phone call.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go back here for a minute, if we can, just to talk about how this all began for you. Where were you born?
I'm from Toronto. I was born on the Danforth, raised in Scarborough, and now I always say I live in Pickering with the rest of Scarborough. So it's sort of that migrant. I was actually born. I was born at which the new Grace Hospital, the church in Bloor. Um, Took my first steps in Withrow Park, and then like the rest of that sort of move or migration, everybody headed east to Scarborough as it was developed, and
Yeah.
and beyond that. Yeah.
When did you first get this bug, the broadcasting bug? What did you
Oh, for
decide that?
news.
Yeah.
I know exactly when it happened. So I grew up in Scarborough. I'm a musician. I wanted to be a rock star. That was just everybody in my neighborhood. That's what we did. We all played. We all had the hair. We were in bands and whatnot. And I loved it. And I really thought, this is what I'm going to do. And then one day that fell apart. Um, a talent issue. So I, I was at home. I was at home watching TV, and I saw an ad come up on our little wee TV in the living room, and it said volunteers wanted at Scarborough Television, which was Scarborough Cable Television. So I went and I walked in the door, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I saw the wall of monitors, and I saw the TV studio, and I said, "This is what I want to do. I know it is." And that was my transition from sort of music, which is it's all storytelling, and there's still a microphone, and there's definitely a performance aspect involved.
Hmm.
So it was all very comfortable to me, and they had a daily news show at Scarborough Cable. No one watched it, but it was a real daily news show, and we were doing stories about bake sales and street signs and whatever.
Yep.
But I fell in love with it, and I basically moved in there, and that's where I eventually got my first job on the television news show because they had a part-time position come open, and my first job was 9 grand a year, and I couldn't believe they were paying me to do it
On cable.
on cable. Yes, and
Wow.
then from cable, I went to CKVR in Barrie, and I stayed there for 3 years, and then from there made my way to CTV. So it was sort of that northern route, right?
And at what point did you realize? Was it at that point in Scarborough already that you thought, okay, this is going to be something I'm going to do for the rest of my life
I didn't realize that until I got the job
in Barrie?
in Barrie.
Right.
I remember, I don't know if you've ever driven up the 400 and you see the huge television tower
Yep.
sticking up from the 400.
Yep.
Well, I remember the day I had my audition, and I was sitting across the 400 in the McDonald's, sitting in my car, looking at that aerial, thinking, wow, my image could be beamed out of that thing and it could be the beginning of a career. And I ended up getting the job. It was to fill in for a mat leave. It wasn't even a real reporter job for 6 months. And then from there, I kind of worked my way. I worked my way into staying there for 3 years.
hmm
Ted Wallachin returns in a moment.
Are you looking forward to a wedding on your calendar? And if you're the groom, Tom is your friend and the best man to help you dress the entire wedding party for your special day. Whether it's formal, informal, a destination wedding, traditional or contemporary, with tailored suits or classic tuxedos with all the accessories. Why rent a tux when it's so affordable to buy a classic that will take you to events for years to come? If you're the father of the bride or groom, or a special guest who needs an elegant new suit or tuxedo, Tom is the wedding wardrobe specialist, and he'll help you get ready for the big day. Find out more at Tom's Place in the heart of Kensington Market. No one can save you more or dress you better than our wedding specialists. Enter our wonderful wedding contest at toms-place.com and a chance to win a $500 credit for your wedding party. Tom's Place will suit you. Have you been tasked with the role of a state executor or expected maybe in the future you will be? Well, if so, let me make your life a lot simpler by introducing you to my friend Debbie Stanley. Debbie is the founder of ETP Canada. They specialize in estate administration. Their goal simply is to help Canadian executors understand their role and how to deal with the loved one's estate. Let's face it, there's no school for this, but ETP Canada offers services such as executor support, estate accounting, and they have a new online course called Executor Ready. It's an engaging video designed to make estate administration easier and affordable. And those are two comforting thoughts during a stressful time. So call Debbie Stanley at 1-866-309-0387. That's 1-866-309-0387. Or you can get her at info@etpcanada.ca. That's info@etpcanada.ca.
Now back to Ted Wallachin.
One of the great accomplishments in your storied career is your Edward R. Murrow Award that you won for an investigative series on date rape, which actually ended up changing Ontario's liquor laws. It's called the Hayes Amendment. Tell me more about that.
So those are two things. So I won an Edward R. Murrow Award for the number one feature story in North America that year. And then my investigation into the date rape crisis, you'll remember that back in the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
It was a huge story. Girls having things dropped in their drinks.
Yep.
So I started to look into it. I started to investigate. And the more stories I did, you may know Nick DiDonato from Liberty, from the Liberty Grand people.
Yeah, chain of brave restaurants. Yep.
Yeah, I was doing the investigation. I had done a couple of stories, and he phones me. And the problem was that girls or people weren't allowed to take their drinks into the washrooms. So there was always a table outside the washrooms where the patrons had to put their drinks down, go into the washrooms, and that's where they ended up being spiked. So he goes, you know why you can't take your drink into the washroom? And I said, no. He goes, it's simply because the washroom is not licensed and the main floor is licensed.
Really?
And I thought, you're kidding me. I thought it was maybe a safety issue or something, a broken glass. He goes, no, it's just because that room is licensed and the other one is not. So I started looking into why.
That is so ridiculous.
But doesn't it sound so Ontario?
Yes, it does.
It was a crazy, archaic law. And Jerry Phillips, who was the minister in charge of the LCBO, got wind of it. And then he started looking into it, and he changed the law to allow bathrooms to be licensed. And he called it the Hayes Amendment.
Wow.
Which was very nice of him to do. Yeah, it was a great story. It was very gracious of Jerry. to do that.
But you're right. That is so Ontario. It's like you remember for the longest period of time, you couldn't. They would not serve liquor on Sundays at a
On a
restaurant.
Sunday, yeah,
A-
or
a-
shop on a Sunday, or
and and eventually they said, okay, if you buy a certain amount of food, you can have a drink. And of course, restaurants were hosing people because they were selling you a cheese platter for like $20,
that's
so
right.
you could buy, so you could buy a drink. And I said, Ontario is the only place. If they ever legalize prostitution, you'll probably have to have a burger before you can get laid.
Wasn't there an old joke of a cheese sandwich that was under the counter? They would just bring it out and put it on the counter in case somebody came in, and then they put the cheese sandwich was like about 8 weeks old. They just keep bringing it out in
Yeah,
case an inspector came in.
yeah. During your course as a newscaster, on how many occasions did you find it really, really difficult to stay apolitical? To just
Um,
walk away from to deliver the story and just bite your lip and say, I know this is wrong, but I can't say anything.
I've never had a problem with being impartial ever. In fact, I still tell people today I don't carry a card. I'm not interested in carrying a card. I don't believe or belong to any sort of political party. Um, and I don't think I ever endorsed anything that I wasn't happy with throughout my career. So I was never meddled with. I was never told what to say. I don't know any of my colleagues that were. We did our best just to relay what we knew, the facts we knew at the time of the 6 o'clock news. And by the way, that's called journalism. You take what
Yeah.
you know and you deliver it, and then you let the person at home decide, make up the opinion about yes or no to this story. And we've kind of got away from that. But I've never had to sort of bite my tongue. Not that I can ever remember with any story.
Did
I know
anybody?
I wouldn't. You know what? I wouldn't stand up there and and fake something and
No, no, no,
say
no,
something I didn't want to say.
no. I didn't mean it that way. I meant that. So, did you ever deliver a story and then think to yourself, okay, these are the facts, but I think these facts are full of BS?
No, no, not really.
No.
I think I did a pretty good job of looking into everything I was delivering and working on. Did a lot of stories I wasn't really interested in doing. You know, the
Yeah.
odd azalea festival here and there, but you got to do those, especially as a young reporter.
Yeah, yeah, so exactly. Now, when we look at the state of news today, if you get a kid walk up to you saying, "Listen, I'm just about to go to Humber, about to go to Ryerson or whatever it's called now, or Seneca, and I want to study news, and I want to be in television news. I want to deliver the news in television, be a news reporter." What do you tell them?
I run into that kid every day because I teach at Seneca. I teach
Okay,
journalism at Seneca part
I didn't
time.
know that.
So um,
I went to
it's tough
Seneca.
because you did.
Yes.
I
Notice I didn't say
it
graduate.
That's okay. I know a lot of people didn't graduate, became very good journalists. Um, I tell them that the world needs journalists today more than ever. And I also tell them that it's not going to be the same as I had it or you had it. Right.
Yeah.
I joined CTV News and I knew a paycheck was coming every 2 weeks. And I knew I was going to be okay. I knew I was going to have a career here if I wanted to stay here.
Yeah.
And you can't say that today. Um, it's a sad state of affair because I think the people who are in charge of looking after the journalism world don't have the appreciation that maybe the owners had back in our day. The Doug Bassett's and whatnot. There was a real thirst and a real dedication to delivering the news every day, and also, but the news was a huge moneymaker as well,
Hmm.
right? So I guess it's an easy choice. Where today I'm not so sure.
Yeah. 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 Today, the idea of a guaranteed salary, because most people are being hired now as freelancers to begin with.
That's right. That's right.
So
And,
with a
and
freelance, I mean, you can forget about there's no medical plan, there's no benefits, there's nothing, there's nothing.
no, and it's very sad. I mean, can you buy a house? Can you raise a family? I mean, I did. I did well. My kids are well Can you do that today? Or do you have to choose a life of living in an apartment or a small room in order to sort of devote yourself to this job? It's really a shame, and it's not fair.
Today, well, as we're recording this, being February the 8th, the big story broke that Bell Media was letting go of 9% of their workforce, or Bell at least was getting rid of 9% of the workforce, which includes Bell Media, radio, television, etc., and also selling off, I think, 45 of their radio stations. What are your thoughts when you read stories like that? And you work for them, as did
Yeah,
I.
I think you should buy one of those radio stations. Get some of your old pals, get your old some of your old pals from Barometer, and
Yeah,
put together an old Q107 day or radio
yeah,
station.
yeah.
It's sad. I mean, it was my lead story this morning on 1 Minute Morning. It's sad, and I know names that have been affected. Right, pals of mine, colleagues of mine, that no longer have a job today, and they're not close to retirement or whatever. And I know they're good journalists and they do a good job, and they're out of a job today. So it makes me angry, um, and it's okay. Well, go get another job. Well, what are you going to be now? You're going to paint houses. This is what we do. It's a really tough situation, especially because I know there's families involved, and it just speaks to that lack of devotion, I think, to doing a proper job with the news.
So, with that in mind, going back to the question I asked you, keeping in mind that you are a teacher at Seneca College teaching communications, with this climate that we exist in, what do you tell them? Do you say things like, don't just focus on one aspect of broadcasting? Try to open up your eyes and try to do as much as humanly possible, because the more you can do, the better chances are of you surviving.
Right. So, I mean, I specifically teach journalism. So I tell them, go be a journalist. Go figure out how to be a journalist today. And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily going to Barry or to City TV or whatever right away. It's about making a name and a presence for yourself and doing some work. And that aspect of journalism, Ted, has never been easier to do. I wish I had an iPhone when I was a
Yeah.
young reporter. I wish I could gather images and everything on my phone. I used to have a notepad tucked down, the back of my pants. That's how we operated,
Hmm.
right? So I never had these tools. So the tools today to actually be your own thing, your one man band thing, journalist, it's available to you. So you got to do that. You got to build yourself a name, and then you got to figure out how to make a living out of it, which I don't necessarily have the answers for.
Yeah. You're sitting there and you're teaching them how to be a journalist,
Right.
and you're not really responsible for their career. But if they come to you on a personal level and say, what else can I do to ensure some sort of security for myself within this industry?
Right. So you did touch on it. Communications is huge. So we do have a number of graduates who are now working for 680 News and CTV News Channel or whatever. So we've had some really terrific success stories. Um, but it's not 90% of the class is guaranteed to get a job. So
Hmm.
what often happens is that these students are taking this after getting their degree. So it can sort of work into all sorts of areas, such as PR, HR, communications in general, um, web building, social media um, operations, and businesses and stuff. So it can really branch out. Well, what I do is I do my best to teach them how to tell a proper story,
Hmm.
how to be a journalist, how to be objective, how to get the facts, and how to put that together in a pretty decent way.
You touched on something, an important point, and I didn't want to interject at the time, but I want to bring it up now, Tom. A few moments ago, when you said, no one ever told me what I should say and how I should think. And
Hmm.
I have had this discussion, and I'm not a journalist. I'm a broadcaster. There's a difference. You're a journalist. But
Hmm.
I had discussions for years and years and years working in radio and television, where people say to me, "Yeah, well, you guys are told what to say and what to do." And I said, nobody's ever told me to lean left, right,
No.
center, or whether to support the government, the conservatives, or not, whether to support the federal government. It's never happened. And you try to explain it to people, and they don't buy it because what they're seeing and what is tainting them now, a lot of it lately, at least, is Fox News, which is clearly not presenting the news; it's presenting opinion.
Right. And it's become sort of believable to a lot of people that we have an agenda, or that we're trying to sell something, or we're trying to sell a message that we've been told to sell. And that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
People don't understand. I never ran into this, by the way, during my career. Being a TV news guy, reporter, was quite a reputable and respectful position. I never ran into this nastiness that my younger colleagues are running into these days. But people simply don't understand how seriously we take our job as a journalist. I remember way back in my career, someone stopped me and they said, "Yeah, I see your reports." And they go, "When I hear your voice in the report, who writes that?" It was just, I go, "Me? What do you mean? Who writes that?" I
Yeah.
go, "I don't say anything. I don't write." They think it's this assembly line, or of something else, or someone else, or some business on a mission, and it's just
Yeah.
not.
And I love it when they put everybody into one little bag and say, "Well, the media says the media is
Right.
controlling the media." That's right. That's right. Do you think that
Yeah.
the editors of the Sun and the Star and the Globe and the Post wake up every morning and talk to each other over coffee and say, "Okay, this is what we're going to do today"?
Yeah. Another one that drives me nuts is when they say, "Oh, they're not allowed to say that," or the media, or you'll see it on social media, a piece of information. The media has been told not to say this, but I'm going to tell you about it. It's all crap
Oh, I know, and I find it
and
interesting
frustrating.
when they say I can't believe you know uh, traditional media, over the air television or newspapers, because it's all
Mainstream media.
slanted. So
Yeah.
where do you go for your news? I go to social media. Oh, okay, social media that has no editors, and actually and say what you want. Say what
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah. I always tell people to look who's writing the story. Do you know the reputation of that story, the reputation of the organization that person
Yeah,
is from? But again, social media is such a great tool today, because if something happens, I go right to Twitter and it's on there. Is it correct? I don't know yet, but it's definitely going to be on there. And I tell this to my students: the first place you want to go is social media. If you hear something going on, it will be there. Do you go to air with that? Absolutely not. That's when you turn into a journalist, and that's when you have to do your job.
yeah. Check it out, because people will send you articles from newspapers and say, "Look at this article. This newspaper said that they caught Hunter Biden doing this and this and this," and I'll
Mm.
look at it, and then I look at it, and I don't recognize this newspaper, and I do research and go, "This Houston Sub Chronicle or whatever, it doesn't even
Mm.
exist. It's not a real newspaper. They just
No.
make up the title of a newspaper or a radio station, and then that somehow gives it legitimacy. You got to spend a lot more time and be a little bit more diligent
You do.
in if you want to
You do.
believe
I
those."
mean, there's a lot of voices out there today, and you could argue maybe too many voices. Before, people used to turn on, 1010, Toronto's authoritative news voice at 4 o'clock, right? Or CTV News at 6 o'clock, right? That there
Yeah,
was limited choices, but they were trusted choices, and
yeah,
those rooms did a great job.
yeah. It's been great chatting with you. 1 Minute Morning is available. Is it 5 days a week or 7 days a week now?
It's 5 days a week, Monday, unless you want to anchor weekends for me, Ted.
Well, you know what? Never know. Why not? Now,
It's Monday to Friday.
and people need to sign up for it to make sure that they get it in their box.
No, you can we are everywhere. You don't have to sign up for anything. You'll find us on TikTok. TikTok is our biggest platform, which really surprised me. It's about 50% of our numbers. I wasn't even going to put it on TikTok at first. I thought, those crazy creative kids are going to want nothing to do with local news, and it's our biggest audience. So that's hopeful. There's hope for
Well,
the
that makes sense, is because
upcoming
it's
generation.
that age group that has a limited span of interest.
Yes, my nephew said that. My nephew's a paramedic in Toronto. He goes, Uncle Tom, he goes, this is just long enough for my generation to absorb. But
Good
we're on
stuff.
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, or X, as you want to call it. We're
Yeah.
everywhere, like City TV.
Yeah, exactly. Great to chat with you, Tom.
Okay, Ted. Thank you.
That'll do it for us for this week. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks to Paul Gatt and to Becky Coles as well. And don't forget, go online, check out our website, tedwoloshin.ca. That's WOLOSHYN. And of course, there's 3 W's in front of that. But you don't need me to say that, do you? People still say that, eh? WW. Yeah, we know. You don't even have to put the W anymore in there. You just put in tedwoloshin.ca and the W shows up on its own. It's like an unwanted uncle at Christmas time or something. But anyway, let us know. Let us know what your thoughts are and any questions that you may have and any suggestions. Always appreciated. Much appreciated. And of course, while you're online, much appreciated as well. If you fill out your organ, tissue, or donation card, you could change or even save a life. In the meantime, have a great week.
The Ted Woloshyn Podcast has been brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. The Ted Woloshyn Podcast is produced by me, Becky Coles. Technical production by Paul Gatt. Music by Bike Thieves. For more information on this podcast and our sponsors, and to talk to Ted, go to www.tedwoloshyn.ca.